Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Tuesday live stream special. I got a bit excited there, and I promise you I will calm down in a bit. But this topic is close to my heart. I've been a job seeker. I still do recruitment. And as well as that, I've been the hiring manager as well. And what we can all agree on is that job seeking is incredibly stressful. So, on that note, I have a fantastic guest with me today, Eileen Round from ArchJobs. Eileen, welcome to the stage. I'll do the virtual round of applause.
Cheers, thank you.
How are you? You all right?
I'm good, thank you.
Right, cool. Well, I'm glad you're here. Now, if anyone's asking, well, Steve, you've got a recruitment website and you've got a job board. Why are you talking with another architecture job board? Well, I think that there's a bigger agenda than just me and just Eileen here. The reality is architecture job seeking is stressful, it's difficult. And if you've ever been looking on these recruitment websites or job boards, chances are it's quite difficult. So on that note, before we go into that topic further, because I told you, I've got my rant bell ready and I love to talk about this. But Eileen, tell us all about yourself. Tell us all about ArchJobs, first of all.
Yeah, so basically I'm the founder of ArchJobs, and which is a curated job board which solely focuses on architectural jobs across the UK. And we've launched the website around 2 months ago. And all the jobs are handpicked, and we pick out keywords, and we've got all the highlights as well. So people don't have to go through software architect positions or anything IT related. So everything on there is good to go. And yeah, that's one of the jobs. So you've got the top bit, and then you've got all the highlights as well, because I think it can be really difficult for job seekers just to see the keywords and what's actually required. So, and then if you would click apply now, then you can see that we list the keywords as well on the bottom. So those are the things people can use or should use when applying, so they hopefully stand out from the crowd.
There you go. It's almost like you've seen a bit of this behind the scenes from recruitment, which helps, doesn't it?
Everyone is talking about keywords, but I don't really think a lot of people actually know which keywords to look for. And then before ArchJobs, I used to be a senior recruitment consultant within BE as well. So it's my bread and butter, something I feel very comfortable, and I'm obviously interested as well talking about. So I've done that over 2.5 years. And yeah, so a lot of architecture over the last few years, which I absolutely love. So yeah, really happy.
I love it. And so we will talk more about, and we will bring up ArchJobs website in a bit again, and everyone should check out archjobs.co.uk. This is not a sponsored post. It's just because I actually really like this job board, right? I think it's really useful. Well, I think it really helps that when a job board is actually designed by someone that's worked in recruitment or has had spoken to candidates. Candidates is kind of like the word. It sounds like Alan Sugar in The Apprentice, but candidates is the word that the job market uses for job seekers, and then client is the word that is used for employers. But really, that's part of the brief for the Architecture Social as well, is like, how do you get that conversation between candidates and clients, or job seekers and employers? Because it's really, really important. And I think the more people like yourself who tackle this problem, the better it will get. So let's move aside the Architecture Social, and let's move aside archjobs.co.uk for a second, right? So if these didn't exist before, what have we got in the space? Now, I know me and you were wondering before, do we save the companies and so forth? But there's a few, I would say, I think about, especially like 5 to 10 years ago, what was really popular was the architectural magazines, Eileen. It was the common architectural magazines. They had the print, and then they had the job board function, and a big part of it was like getting the ads out in the newspaper. Or the journal, but I don't think that works anymore. I don't think anyone's looking at those. They may be looking at the website. Do they look at the job boards? I'm not so sure. I mean, what's your experience with the current options out there, Eileen?
I think if you're looking at one of those major, like Indeed, for example, if I'm allowed to say other names, but
Yeah.
like the more common ones, it is just really difficult to filter through the right criteria. It's like if you search even just architect in the filter, then you get anything from software architect to IT to anything pretty much IT related, and the salaries are so much higher, unfortunately, than architects. And then you get like really odd numbers and saying like, oh, average salary should be 60 grand, which would be lovely for most of us, I think.
Yeah.
But it's just, and then I think another problem is that you don't know if the jobs are still live, because a lot of job boards just take jobs from other websites. So again, people aren't really sure if it's still worth applying to them as well. And I think you just have a lot of problems with odd, where it's just slightly misleading, where you just
Yeah.
don't know what they actually want. So, because everyone is writing their own job briefs. And I think you know yourself that it's really difficult, I think, for companies to write like a really solid job description as well. Either they're
Yeah.
too long, too short, like a one sentence, we're looking for an architect, are you interested? Apply. Just like, what do you guys offer, or the arrangement. So it can be really confusing. And I think a lot of people are a bit like, I'm not really sure if I'm going to go for this. Or a lot of jobs are just advertised by recruitment agencies and they are not sure if they've already applied to that one. So I think people just are a bit more cautious these days just to go via the more common job boards as well.
Yeah, fair enough. I think like LinkedIn I quite like at the moment out of them all. However, I know what you were alluding to, like the Indeeds of the world, and it's true, isn't it, that I think like Glassdoor, for instance, has a function of weighing up architecture salaries, and you're right, the predictors usually way off because you're right, the moment you put like a data architect in there or a solutions architect, which isn't an architect, and hey, we can have a subject on that because I know there's a few good architects on LinkedIn who get really wound up about that. And I can understand if you've done it for 7 years, you know, solutions architect is not technically a legal architect. But that aside, those kind of big job boards, they don't necessarily cater for the niche, you know. And there are a few websites in the niche, but you're right as well. There's also a lot of architectural recruitment websites in the niche, and there's also a lot of architectural recruitment companies which use the job boards. But to loop it around to what you said, and I think that's really important to mention. So if there's any employers listening, most job descriptions that are written are quite bad, and chances are your job descriptions are quite bad too. And I'm really sorry to break that bubble to you. Eileen's laughing in the corner there. However, they typically are, because most ads that, in my experience, are written are very top down. So what do I mean by top down? They mean, I am Stephen Drew Architecture Practice. We are award winning, yada 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 yada, and we are looking for someone with 10 years experience, 5 years Revit, this and this and that. Must have this, must have that, must apply by this date, must have 10 megabytes, must also tell us a joke or something like that. And you get all this crazy stuff, and by the end, it's like, oh, I don't even want to work there. You got to excite people, especially right now where there's a shortage of really good people. Right. And that's actually a really good thing. Maybe in the future, the market will have changed, the job market. And that's slang for, you know, all these jobs online. But right now, there's a shortage of people, isn't there, Eileen? So actually, people have the upper hand right now. They don't have to put up with all these, you know, rubbishy job boards and all this stuff. But I think people still get lost in the process. So mini rant over, and I'll allow a bit of air for you to get in there. I mean, what's your thoughts on Eileen, on everything I've said?
I think you're definitely right. So over the last 2 months now, I've probably read over 500 to 600 job descriptions, and a lot of them don't mention salaries, which is always a big deal breaker, because you might find the perfect candidate, go through all the stages, interview stages, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, we offer you that much money. Then all of a sudden it's like, no, that's far too low, I can't do it. And then everyone wasted so much time. It's just incredible. So the more transparency you can provide go ahead and do it. You don't have to say everything, but at least list a couple of benefits, and don't just say we offer 20 days holiday, because that's basic. Like, don't say it's a benefit. So I think it's just knowing what people want. And I've done some research as well, like the Gen Z generation, they want a lot more flexibility, and they want more holiday allowance, pension as well. So I think we need to cater in those job descriptions as well, and target on those things as well. Whereas others want more family time, so flexibility, working from home, again, more holiday as well. So I think people need to think about who I'm trying to attract and what do they want. So yeah, and salary is always a big problem. So it would be amazing to have that, or even if people are open to part-time workers as well, because I'm sure that would open up to a lot more applications.
Yeah, fair enough. I tell you what, you can critique my website in a little bit of what works and what doesn't as well. And I'll tell you what I like about ArchJobs. But before we move on to that, you touched upon very poignant points at the moment. And I think salary, especially in the time of recording this, that's what, I can't even remember now. It's like November the 8th. 2022. At the time of this, I think we've seen some stuff come online. You've got the I think it's called the 100 pay at the moment, and 100 pay is talking about like the list of architecture salaries behind the scenes in architecture practice, what people are on and stuff. And I really do understand at the moment the desire to put salaries on vacancies. I totally get it. There's nothing more frustrating than going down the process and realizing that the company wants to make you an offer 10 grand or 5 grand less than you're on. It's a waste of everyone's time. Told you my sarcasm bell would come out. So that's a waste of time. On the other hand, I can see where maybe if you're a smaller architecture practice and you have a lot of good benefits and you really do care about your work, but maybe because of the sector you're in and the size of the company, maybe you can't compete with an architecture juggernaut. So it is a can of worms. I do understand at the same time, though, a job seeker's frustration because they've kind of been tossed around so much, Eileen, in between, and time wasted and stuff. I'm sure you don't have the answer because we're all working it out. But what's your thoughts currently on salary transparency in jobs?
I think it is really important to be transparent, especially if companies ask for what are your salary expectations, let us know in the cover letter. I think it's two-way street, because I feel like people might worry that they say like a number which is too high and then they might not get an interview or something. So I think it's a tricky one. I understand that not everyone wants to be very transparent on salaries, because it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah,
But
it
at
is.
least provide benefits, at least provide something which is interesting, and then you can back yourself up as well as a company. And but again, it's a tough one. I feel like there might not be a right or wrong answer just yet, but if you don't provide salary, then you need to be transparent during the first couple of stages, obviously with the interview stages as well, so you're all on the same page.
Yeah, fair enough. And so for anyone watching the video here, this is not a website that me and Eileen are involved in, but it's heavily in the news at the moment. I think it's a good talking point, which is the Pay 100. So I think everyone should check that out and weigh your opinions on it. I do think it's definitely got the conversation going. But I can see both sides of the arguments. I think we were talking before, Eileen, isn't it? I think one or two employers at the moment are kind of talking about the salaries and the accuracy, but at the same time, I do think that it's really important that people are looking at this stuff. So I'm gonna leave the link here for anyone to look at it, and it will be interesting to see how this website goes. Will it struggle under pressure from the juggernauts of the industry, or will it survive and grow and become the de facto website? I mean, who knows, really? It could go either way. I mean, what do you think, Eileen?
I think the idea is really good. And I think it would be good just to bring that focus back onto salaries, because I do think they're very low, and it would be really good to boost them. I would also, what I would like to see is more data points.
Yeah.
Because I think at the moment it can be quite easy
Yeah,
just to
opaque.
say, oh, someone is paying like that low or that high, but then there are a
Yeah.
lot more factors, like maybe they've got multiple offices and they've only got one office in London and all the other ones are in the northwest, because that will make such a big difference as well. Would be good to know how many people submitted
Yeah.
salary as well from a particular company. So I think, as you can see, I think the idea is really good. I think it just needs a lot more data so people can generally understand a lot more. And yeah, but I'm just all about data. So I love having data, but at the same time, I need to know a little bit more in order to make my own decision, or,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to think if it's good or bad. But no, I do like the idea though, 100%. And I hope
With
they get a lot more data points in, or more people supplying their details.
Fair enough. Well, there you go. So, if for any of the audio listeners maybe not seen the video, this is the thepay100.org, and that is right now a architecture salary advocate website. So that's where I think it's important to mention. Again, not sponsored. We just going through it all today. It's my area. I love it. Anyways, okay. I promise I'll move on. Why that's important is salary transparency. So there is that, but I think bringing it back, right? So we're going to park the controversial bit of salaries for the side. Where I think the other bit that's really important is culture, right? We know that architecture is not the highest paid profession. It just isn't, okay? And I think that bearing that in mind, more than ever, especially after the pandemic, I think a lot of it is about what kind of company do I want to work in? Okay. So I'll tell you what I've been doing on the architecture social quickly, and then I'll tell you what I love what you doing on Arc Jobs, and maybe together we will, I don't know, pick up a few juicy nuggets from each other, and it will just like turn into one juggernaut. But where my idea comes from it, because I love what you're doing now with the architecture social, and I'm just gonna bring it up. Part of it's a directory, okay, so it's less job book centric because we do too many stuff, which is like my blessing and burden. I've confessed to you I'm running around, but the core idea of it was a directory. And so Blue Peter style, here's one that I did earlier, right? Because I last year did about 1 year inside an Ackroyd Lowry. Okay, so in this directory, you've got all these feeds. And so what I'm trying to do is, so on the Architecture Social, companies can post their culture, they can post their projects, they can post jobs as well. But it's talking about the description, what it's like to work there, what sectors are there. So there you see data. I thought you'd appreciate that. What software, the location, culture, any episodes, podcasts. If they were on the podcast, they can go, and the article and blogs as well. And what I've added recently, but I need to update this, is hybrid working, because that's a big thing, right? So do people do hybrid working or not? So I'll go in the back end after this and I'll add it. Why I mention this though is because you're doing similar things. Let me get up my ad here now. In the Arc Jobs, you showed me a job earlier, and here you're highlighting pensions, bike to work schemes, budget, social events. So I feel like we're coming at it in the same angle. Basically, we need to unpack the cultural practices because that's what's important. However, back to the critique: do I pass or fail?
I do like it, 100%.
Yes.
I do like it, yeah.
Good.
Because people are really into as well, just not knowing what the job is, but who's actually behind it. And in every job brief, you read like, "Oh, we're a fun environment" or "friendly team." And I mean, it is stressful, isn't it, being an architect? It's a
Yeah.
deadlines and everything. So I would hope you've got a good team and a friendly working environment. To be honest.
Yeah. I fully agree. Well, thank you. I've passed the test. Have I got some victory music here? I don't really know. There we go. Just a bit of pass the test vibe, you know? Here we go. Can you hear it? I can't know if we can hear it
I
or not.
can, yeah.
There we go. There
Very
you go.
chilled.
I couldn't hear it. Damn. I couldn't enjoy the music. So, what was the main reasons behind you picking these criterias? Have you found so far as well, when you're starting to do these, are there a few things that companies do a lot of, like the bike to work, ride to work scheme? Are there a few things as well that are unconventional that you've seen in the highlights, which are quite cool in architecture practices?
I think that it really depends like how much information companies post on their jobs as well, because sometimes on the job brief you can't really find out a lot about a company, and then I'll go onto the on the website as well and have a quick look through it, see if I find anything else.
Yeah.
But I think there are definitely some companies who do it right. You know, they've got life insurance, private medical, income protection, enhanced parental schemes, and all these extras that they are proper benefits, not just, as I said earlier, like 20 days holiday or plus 8 days bank holidays. Like, don't know. It's just no point of even mentioning that one. I think if you don't
Really?
have great benefits, then
Is the fruit
don't
bowl
say
not
that.
good enough anymore, Eileen? No?
Well, and
No?
the cookie, the chocolate cookie was the best one so far.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was. I wasn't sure if they were joking or not. So I hope
Maybe.
it was a joke. I really hope so.
You hope it was
Um,
a joke.
but yeah, I think the highlights are mentioning like unique selling points, you know, with anything benefit related, or if they could work on international projects as well. Then I mentioned sector, software experience as well,
Yeah.
working style, and ideally salary, which can be hit and miss really.
Yeah.
But I think working style is really important. So if they do flexible, perfect. If you can start a little bit later or earlier, you know, drop off those kids from school or go to the doctors, perfect. Hybrid as well. I think that's really good. I am quite. I think I see less and less that people can just work from home, obviously like full time. I think that just doesn't work anymore, because you need to be like in a creative environment. You know, you've got all the juniors starting as well. They need that support, the mentorship. So I think it is really good just to have people going back into the office like 3 times a week. And I hope people aren't going to be like, don't say that. I just want to work from home. But I think you need to be surrounded by creative, by your colleagues as well, and solve problems that way. Because I think what a lot of job or companies look for is those strong communication skills and problem solving skills. And I think you can only learn that when you're in that environment. So
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think so. It's quite interesting, isn't it? So while the architecture social is there, and of course you should check out the architecture social as well as archjobs.co.uk. I think that I want to talk in a bit about some job seekers tips, but maybe what we can rule here as well, that in the current climate, a lot of this is influenced by architecture practices, and I think you're right. I think that 9 out of 10 architecture practices that I meet, they were unaware that actually, as you said, talking about these highlights, talking about these perks, talking about flexible working and the kind of environment and support that they give, pictures of the office, stuff like that. The more transparent you are of the culture, and maybe that's a step that's a bit easier than talking about salaries, but I think the more transparent about you are about the culture, the more likely you are to get applications, especially in a job seekers market where there's less job seekers, right? So would you agree on that before we talk about
yeah,
candidates?
yeah, I definitely agree on that, especially if you're a smaller praxis and you don't have like one of those AJ100 websites, you know, where you've got a whole team looking after your website and keeping that one up to date. It can be really difficult to show people what the work culture is. So I think you just need to take that time and just write a good job description, include the stuff you're good at as well and what the benefits are. So yeah, just definitely. So definitely agree on
Yeah.
that point.
Good. So I know that as well. When you were making art jobs, you had a few. I don't know if you've got them there right now, but I'd love to hear you. I think you posted on Reddit and was like, "Look, I'm looking for feedback. Can everyone tell us what they like and what they don't like about the job seeking search?" So was a lot of that what we covered just now, or was there anything else that popped up, Eileen?
I think we've already covered quite a lot. I think it was just like people weren't really sure if the jobs were still live, or some
Okay.
of the job descriptions were just too long, or once you click on them, then you have to go and upload all of the jobs, all of your details again, or it's just far too long. Like some of those things as well. But yeah, I think for architecture people, it's more about the search filters that there aren't great, and you just waste so much time of
Yeah.
just going through software jobs.
Yeah. Fair
Probably
enough. So I mean,
regretting.
yeah, it is true. It's true. I think if anyone's made it to this halfway point, so we kind of talked about what we see out there. Generally, there's a lot of rubbishy websites, if I'm allowed to say that, and it can fatigue you in the job seeking search. So maybe what we can do now for those that have made it halfway, Eileen, is that we can both give some of our top tips on what to currently do at the moment, apart from checking out our websites. So
Of
apart
course.
from that, apart from obviously checking out our websites, what else could you do? So let me tell you what I normally advise people to do. I think, especially if you're early in your architecture career search, especially if you're a graduate, I always say that you shouldn't waste a lot of energy speaking to recruiters. They're probably going to be better later in your career when you started working out which way you want to go, when you start specializing in a commercial sector of one way or another, whether it's residential or hotels, whatever, right? People get shocked by that all the time. And that's why I set up the Architecture Social, because recruiters are briefed to find specific things, and that's how they make a return on their investment in time, right? And what I find is that you get a lot of awesome graduates that call up a recruiter, and you might get like 1 or 2 minutes of information because they're busy. That's why I set up the Architecture Social, to do all this content. So what I say to people, first thing is, if you're a graduate, you need to find direct applications, and you can use some job boards. However, Dezeen is the example I use because it's the most popular. It's a victim of its own success in that way. Whereas I think if you got an architectural assistant in part one job on Dezeen, everyone and their mother will apply to it. Pretty much, right? So the competition's harder. So you're leveling that competition a bit, because what you do with your website right now is that you find all these architecture practices. But let's pretend, let's move your website aside for a second. I always said to people is that it's a bit traumatic, but the best way to go about the search, Eileen, was to go through the Reaper list of like 3,000 companies in the UK, click on everyone's website and send applications, whether or not a job's there. So that's my approach when you're a graduate, is volume. Okay. And further in your career, I think is, okay, you can speak to a good recruitment consultant, or you do a curated search yourself of a few particular companies which interest you, it's your sector, and so on. Do you want to expand or add or agree to anything I've suggested there? Maybe there's the graduate, and maybe there's the postpart free,
Yeah, I think you're definitely right by don't contact recruitment agencies. It's very unlikely that they'll be able to help you, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It's a shame though, isn't it? Because you come across some really cracking candidates, and you just know that they'll be much better off just sending their applications themselves. I always think that quantity is important, I think, especially if you're at that stage, but also quality. So make sure your CV is good, you've got a good portfolio. I don't think sending a link to your portfolio is a good idea. I think you should have a
Good point.
PDF file, and always have like a sample portfolio and then your full portfolio as well. So send the smaller one with your CV. but yeah, I always think like just do your research. If they ask for cover letter, I know not a lot of people aren't keen on them. Write a cover letter. People will know straight away if it's a generic one, like "Hi, I've just seen your job, love it." Don't do that. Just probably don't write one at all. If you just do one of those generic ones. But yeah, just kind of think about what you want. Do you think you want to approach a larger company, or do you think you would want to work for a smaller practice? There are obviously pros and cons for both of them. I think it also depends on your personality type, what you're after. So, yeah, I do think quality is quite important, but make sure that your CV is good. That's just my main thing, because it all starts with a good CV. Because if they don't like it, then they won't spend any more time on that one, like the hiring manager, for example. So make sure you got that one right.
Yeah, fair enough. Actually, I should bring it up because on my website, you've actually written 2 guest posts for me at the moment. Woohoo! So we'll bring them up in the background, but you actually do go through it really well. So I'll bring that up here and you can check out these on the Architecture Social. But they're really good. And so I've written a few in this area as well. It's always good to get 2 perspectives because sometimes, of course, there's overlap, but you say some stuff I wouldn't have thought of and vice versa, especially like covering letters, okay? I personally, controversial, I don't think anyone needs a covering letter because I think that a succinct email is effectively a covering letter in the modern world. Having said that, Eileen, some employers I know swear by them, and others don't
Yeah.
care. So there's sometimes I think there's no one size fits all. What I would say is, and you'll laugh, that probably on my tombstone now will be the words, how many pages should be in my portfolio, Stephen? Right? Because I always get asked that, and I'm like, I don't know, it could be sample portfolio 10, 15, but there's no hard set rule, right? It either flows or it doesn't. But anyways, so you did an article the other day for me on how to prepare for an architecture job interview, and people can check that out in a bit. But in terms of the search right now, to get those interviews, optimizing it, you should check out this link, and I'll put it here where Eileen's awesome link is, when the link's back to her website as well, So all that's on the Architecture Social in the advice section, so you can check out Eileen's advice as well. But let's bring it back for a second. So what was I talking about? Job seeking, right? Okay, so I think as well, this is my opinion, right? You should have, if I was a part 1 right now, I would get the 5 to 10 companies that I really admire and I would curate them because I know some people really want to. And I think good to get that out of your system. And then I would do everyone, which is more of a generic approach, and just whack it out to all the companies, because then you've got the ones you aspire to, the Heather Wicks, whatever, whoever you want to work for, whoever you looked up to, and then you've got the bulk. And if I was a gambling man, I'm not really much of a gambling man, but if I was, chances are I reckon you probably get a job out of the bulk that you didn't consider. So a really good quick example is I got my part 1 job at EPR Architects, and 10, 15 years ago, they had a good reputation, but they were more commercial orientated than especially they are today. I think the design's gone up because it's been 15 years, right? And I just sent my application out in all the pile of CVs out there. I didn't know much about them, but obviously when I got the interview, I started getting excited and stuff. And the point is, when I graduated, I never thought, oh, I'm going to send my CV specifically to EPR. It was in the list, and it was a happy accident. And what I find as well is that, like you said, sometimes people they see the dream website, they see the dream job, right, and then they go for the interview and go, I didn't like it. I didn't like the hiring manager. And then this one with maybe not the best website. Maybe they don't explain all the stuff we were talking about. They don't explain the flexible work and the good stuff they do, the office job, because the website could do a bit of work. But then you go and it's awesome. So I think it helps to keep, especially if you're a grad, an open mind when you're going into these things. What do you think?
I think networking would be really useful as well. And I know a lot of people are quite shy about it. And I think I've seen quite a lot of new LinkedIn profiles, and they're very bare, like there's not much going on, so it's not going to help you. So that's another reason why I wrote one the other day, an article on how to, you know, just like judge it up a little bit so it actually looks like a good profile. And I think it can be quite daunting, isn't it? Because you're in that bubble and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I need a job now. And then I'm open-minded to everything, you know, but I think if you kind of know maybe what you want, what you're after, then you can narrow it down a little bit. And then again, just go down that bit of a quality route, you know, where you've just got an idea kind of what you want, you know, and just talk to people as well, see what they where they worked as well. Or I don't know, do you think would you recommend while you're still studying just that you keep an eye out on projects or companies and you start following them online, and just, you know, because when you interact with these companies, they will kind of remember your name as well. They will like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, like Stephen, he's like quite into our projects as well, and he actually sent us his CV as well, you know. It's like, do you think that would help at all?
Yeah, I think it can't hurt. I mean, there's no guarantees, but it's like I hate the expression, but it's also true. Sometimes you've got to be in it to win it, right? So it's like
Yeah.
if for instance I attended a talk where you were presenting, Eileen, and then for instance maybe I said I really enjoyed that. We met each other briefly. Maybe in 6 months' time when I'm looking for a job, I went, "Hi, Eileen, it's Steve who was at your conference." Before, just following up, and here's my CV and portfolio. I'm looking for a job right now, and you might go, "Oh yeah, I remember that loud Welsh guy," and then you go, "Oh, he seemed all right. We'll get him in," and that can be the difference. And
Yeah.
also, life is full of what's the word I'm looking for? Like variables. So I always find it funny, right? Where I did a talk once, and it was for this famous BIM manager or BIM leader or whatever. And I was on this clubhouse last year. Really nice guy. Set up Architect, right? And he works at BIG. And they're saying that at BIG, they have their internal recruitment system and all this stuff. And the candidate sends their CV through here, and it goes through these hoodles. And I said to him, listen, if I sent my CV direct to you, are you saying you wouldn't open it up? He's like, oh, of course I'd have a look at it. And I said, right, okay. So on that basis, if you opened it up and you like what you seen, would you invite me for an interview? Of course I would. So I just shortcut the whole politics, the system, and everything at this company. And I find it amazing. I don't know whether it's a British thing or what, but when we go like job seeking, we start like taking on all these extra requests and then reasonable stuff just because it's the way it is. You know, put your passport number in. Oh, really? I didn't know we should do that. And suddenly you're doing it, right? And I think that you follow this procedure, whereas in life you can take massive shortcuts, which are not rude, they're situational. So if, for example, back to your analogy, I knew that BIM manager because I went to, I don't know, a grasshopper convention or a dynamo enthusiasts forum, whatever, right? And he was there, and then I dropped him a CV. I shortcut the whole system. And 9 times out of 10 times, maybe the HR person is slightly annoyed, but they will go, ah, okay, and then you're in. I mean, what do you think about that? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think HR would absolutely hate that.
They
That
would.
approach. They'll be like, no, through our website, which is fair enough. You know, it's a lot of work, especially the bigger the company, at least you can gather all the CVs and put them all through the, you know, steps. But I think it is just so important because if you it can be quite difficult if you're like an introvert, for example, like going out to events is already quite tricky, and then talking to someone as well, it
Yeah.
can be really daunting. But I think just get yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, because not a lot of people will do it. So you will already stand out quite a lot. And I think what most hiring managers look for in junior people as well is like, they want you to be proactive. I read that over and over again, like part 1, part 2 is like, be proactive, you know, show interest. They don't expect you to know everything, but just be there, be interested as well, you know. I think it won't hurt. to be
Yeah.
honest, and connect with them as well. Everyone seems to be on LinkedIn anyway, like all the directors and other architects as well. So just build your network. It will certainly help in the long
Yeah.
run as well.
Yeah, the network's one of these things that if you asked me 10 years ago, especially before doing a sales job, what's the importance of a network, I would have just told you, Eileen, I'm too busy doing my architecture to
Yeah.
care enough about a blooming network. But now, having been working for 10, 12 years, it's never a bad thing, right? And even to the point where when you are an architectural professional, if you do have a network with clients or whatever, you're always, the more and more chances of knowing people, or you can bring in work, you're making your life easier for each other, of yourself. A network, I mean, that's the truth. If a practice is aware of you, and then you're looking for a job, I mean, sometimes the job comes to you, and that's quite normal as well. Later in your career, you don't have to look at job boards anymore. As much as I'd love you to go on my website or Eileen's website, you don't have to anymore, because you build up that network and the opportunities come to you. That takes time though, and if it helps. Okay, while I'm not doing architecture anymore, my parents didn't come from an architecture background. No one knew me, and that's why at the start you're gonna have to use the job boards. You're gonna, especially if you haven't developed your network, you're gonna have to basically, what's the word I was gonna say? Like, let's sort through all the junk out there to find the jobs. And kiss a lot of frogs, really. But it is possible, and actually. It can be even harder, actually, and this is one bit maybe we can talk about before, because I know we're going to wrap up in an hour and all this stuff. But like, I think it's even more difficult looking for jobs, especially if you're like an overseas architect, if you haven't worked in the UK, because there's the whole other aspect which we haven't mentioned to now of visas. That's what I was going to. Does a company sponsor or not? It's on the company website, and a lot of employers are not sure on that. And I think that would be my top tip to employers, is to put that on the website. But what I was going to say as well, Eileen, is that when I've done career coaching with a lot of candidates, which is something I do on a one-to-one session, not a huge amount of time, but if people want a session, I can do it. And it comes up a lot talking about visas, and what I always say is it's better to like tackle it head on. So say now in your applications, I think it's really good to mention what visa you need, take ownership of the problem, and so that the employer is fully aware, you know how to deal with it, you've got your immigration lawyer ready and all this stuff, and then it kind of debunks it. Well, I think it's good to bring up, if you're a job seeker, the visa at the front, because then the employer knows, and it's not an anticlimax at the end. But also I think that employers need to start saying on their websites and stuff if they are able to sponsor, because that helps denoise the process. I mean, what's your thoughts about overseas architectural professionals getting a job in the UK?
God, it's tough, because it is absolutely brutal, because I think a lot of people might not be aware that even if you're an architect, you can't call yourself an architect unless you are registered with the AIB. So you would have to change your job title to potentially like an architectural designer. Then a lot of companies want UK experience. How do you get UK experience if you can't you find a job? So you might have to do a contract job for a little while, maybe go down maybe you've got really good technical skills, then I would definitely say try and just get a job just helping out with drawings as well, because there are a lot of contract positions out, and then once you've got one or two things, chuck them onto your CV and portfolio, show that you have got that experience. But yeah, you're right, it is really tough. I spoke to someone the other day as well, and it's just really heartbreaking, because I'm sure they're super, super talented, but just getting that first proper job, it's hard. And I think it's even harder for them than for anyone else.
Yeah, I agree. I think that for anyone that is, because I speak to a few overseas architects, probably like 5 to 10 a week, and you know this from working in recruitment.
Yeah.
And in essence, now I try to give them some information to to kind of carry on with their search. However, it's pretty much like we talked about a graduate. I think like an overseas professional, when they come to the UK, they've just got to like smack their CV and portfolio out there to as many places as possible. And like you said, be open to contract jobs. And I do think, as you literally word for word, as you said, I think that tech can be an advantage to play into that. So, crazy question, and then you can ask me a bunch of questions, because I'm on this LinkedIn creators course, and I know you hate me for asking this, but also hopefully you love me for my honesty. Is I've got to talk about the metaverse, and I wonder, do you see job boards in the metaverse? I personally don't yet, so I'll show you what I think and tell me what you think. I don't know yet. Okay, I'm starting to see architecture in the metaverse. I'm not seeing a job board for architecture in the metaverse. I don't know if there's architecture job boards in the metaverse. But what I could see it working well for is virtual meetings or career fairs or something like that. So, Eileen, what do you think about the metaverse? Or can you think, Steve, I can't even deal with that right now, dude. I'm dealing with the real world.
I'm dealing with ArchJobs. I find it really weird, to be honest. I'm still not really sure what to think about it. Yeah, I don't know. And to be honest, I can't see how a job board would fit into that just yet, because I think job boards are when people just scroll through their phone on the way home, maybe, or just on the weekend have a quick look, and it's not, because you normally don't really ask anyone about like, oh, is this all right, because it's something quite personal, isn't it, to send your application. So but no, I think you're right with the events. That could be really good, to be honest, because why not? People don't have to go there. It's probably better than a Zoom meeting or something like that. It's a lot more interactive, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, but it's a funny one, to be honest. I'm not sold on the metaverse.
You're not convinced. What about having an interview in the metaverse? Maybe that could happen.
I'm sure it will happen, but I just know that how nervous people get just having a Zoom call,
Yeah, true.
and or Teams thing, that's already stressful. And I think it's quite nice if you within architecture as well, that you can just show your portfolio as well. And I'm all about actually going there. You can see the office, you can meet people as well. You can see if the commute is fine or not. It might be absolutely terrible, but you won't know if you do it online. It's also a lot easier just to read someone's body language, and that people won't switch off. Well, I hope so, because I think a lot of people don't even turn off their camera, so you don't even know who you're talking to. So I'm all about face-to-face meetings. I think maybe old school.
Yeah, you're not interested in the Matrix just yet. We got to win you over a bit. You got to win you over.
Maybe,
So now's your turn. I ambushed you with the metaverse question, which I agree was difficult because even though I'm not too sure of the answer. Do you have any questions for me? It can be one or two or none. It could be whatever you want.
Or just
really.
In general, or about the metaverse?
In general. So.
In general, what would be your tip for any job seekers right now? Do you think if anyone wants to find a job before the end of the year, do you think it's already too late, or do you think now is like the last chance really to send out applications and doing that?
Yeah, good question, and see what you think. I think that you should always apply whenever you're applying anyways. I used to get a lot of questions like, oh, it's Friday afternoon, should I send my CV? And I would be like, dude, just send your CV, because the moment you go in that games of like, I hear that Tuesday at 11 o'clock is the optimum time, so I'm going to hold back my CV for 3 days. I'm just kind of like, just send it anyways. I can see how like things will get overlooked on a Friday afternoon, but generally, if the pen's going, generally if like no, it's all right, don't worry. But like if the CV and portfolio is good, right? chances are you'll get called. Okay, there are some things like an inbox can be overwhelmed, but generally, if there's a candidate shortage in the company that they're really hiring, someone's looking in that inbox, and if your CV and portfolio is good, if you send it 3 o'clock on a Friday, you're going to get an interview anyways. And I think the same applies in November. I think you should definitely look now. I just think perhaps still send things, but manage your expectations. As for example, if you apply the first or second week of December, you might not hear back because everyone wants to get pissed down the pub. Sorry, I suppose to want to get, down the pub. They want to wind down for Christmas. In recruitment, I don't know about you, but December was always tougher for me because some of my clients were like, we'll interview in the new year. And I'd be like, wait, can we do it now, please? So I don't get sacked or whatever. But so you might get, it might happen in the new year. But why not follow up? Why can't you send your CV in December and then be like, hey, Happy New Year, just following up to see where things are at. And by the way, I've added 2 new technical slides to my portfolio. Look forward to hearing from you. There's no harm in sending it in December and following up in January. I don't have the factual figures for this, but my guess, anecdotally, having worked in architectural recruitment for years, is that 90% or maybe 95% of people don't follow up. And even then, the ones that do probably follow up once and then don't do it again. And I think that as long as you're polite, you can be persistent. That's the key. No one likes someone nagging who's rude, like, excuse me, hello, where's my reply? No one likes that. But there's nothing wrong with going, hey, just so that you know, I've updated my portfolio. I know you probably got a lot of things going on. Is there any vacancies at the moment that I might be suitable for? Look forward to hearing from you. That's nice, and people can say no back to you. And then if they say no, no problem. Always go for the no's and be happy if you get an interview. Is that useful for you, thoughts?
Yeah, no, because I think it depends what people's expectations are. If they think they want to start the new year with a new job, I think could be a bit tight right now, because if you think about the whole process of sending out CVs and then the practice looking at them, setting up interviews, then you might have 2 to 3 stages potentially. And then and then we're probably already in December, and then people are going on holiday. Nobody wants to make a decision on anything and then just say, right, we're just wrapping up for the year. And I always thought at the end, after mid-December, things go so quiet because with holidays and everything else. So I think depends what people want. Some practices are like, yeah, go. We're just going to sort this out. And then Happy New Year, you'll start with us. If not, usually the first week of December, Jan is usually quite busy, isn't it? With people coming back to the office, setting up interviews as well. But yeah, I think you're right. If someone, as a recruiter, you and I, when you see a good CV in a portfolio, straight away, you can see it, isn't it? You're this is perfect.
Yeah,
it's stands out.
Yeah, you're gonna reply, or you're insane, and you won't have your job for long as a recruiter, or as sometimes practices overlook things, or sometimes what I see happening is there's no need for that role, and then suddenly the hiring manager goes, or one of the directors goes, we need a BIM manager, and then you go through the inbox and hey, are you still available? And generally, if someone's good, they're gone. That's the truth, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it does happen. Maybe last question before we wrap up with things. Do you have one more for me?
Do you recommend using a recruiter or not? Or when do you think someone should use a recruiter?
I side of that one because I have mixed thoughts about it. I am a recruiter, so I'll go back to it. I'll expand on what I said earlier. Yes and no. I think that they can really help with the search, but they're also it's a human process. It would be unfair for me to judge all recruiters. I think you got a lot of amazing recruiters. My father actually calls recruitment, and which I mean, a necessary evil, right? That's my father's description of it, because he's like, oh, someone's got to do it. Someone's got to find people. And so that's his description on recruitment consultants. And I think that recruiters are sometimes have got a bad rap because we bring it on ourselves, okay? Not everyone that comes into architecture recruitment cares about architecture. You do get pushy recruiters. You do get recruiters which, don't follow up, do all this kind of naughty stuff. You got some recruiters that do illegal stuff like not using GDPR. But for every bad recruiter, I think you get a good recruiter. And I think I liken it like estate agencies. Like I've had an estate agent before, which was amazing. And if I was ever in Manchester, I'd go through my emails and get her back because she was so good, really fair, really helpful. And I've also had a lot of cowboy estate agents where I'm like, this dude just wanted to rip me off from the get-go, right? And I think in recruitment, unfortunately, because it's the level of sales role, it comes to that. So I always say, yes, use recruiters. Like we talked about, if you're a grad, just use the advice we've done. If you're favoring your career, yes, use a recruiter, but I think you should judge recruiters. You should review. You should check out if you want to use the recruiter. Check out their reviews online if they have any. Check out who they are. Check out their background. Maybe don't read into it too much if they studied architecture or not, because I've managed on my recruitment team before good recruiters who are not from architecture. But you do want to kind of test if they give. Oh, I was going to say if they give a. You know what I mean? Like, because if they do care, then that helps a lot, and generally the service will be reflected on it. I tell you what, though, because right now it's just me in the architecture social, and one thing that I am guilty on that I'm trying to work on, and it's kind of getting there, but not fully, because I need to hire someone. And I had a confession with you before that actually I sometimes do not get back to everyone that I want to get back to. And so I'm aware of that, working on it. I try to be as honest as possible. I say, sorry, I haven't got back to you. I'm overwhelmed. I don't try to make excuses because there's no point, right? But I guess that's what I'm saying. That's my negative at the moment. My pros is X, Y, Z. And you have to weigh up who you want to work with. And as well, I don't. What I've learned last rant when I'm here is that I believe that in recruitment you can't push people into jobs, or you can, and then it doesn't work out. And I think that a good recruiter will let you make your own decisions, but also help you out. So gone are the days where, I don't know what recruitment environment you were in, but I've been in the offices before where it's like, tell them this, tell them that, get them to sign, do this, do that. And I just think now I go for the no. So I say, look, if you're not interested in the interview or the job, just let me know. It's fine. And then my job's become easier for it because you're not pushing people in the roles. You let them think what they want to do, and they carry on. So, roundabout answer, you should use recruiters further in your career, but review your recruiters, do your due diligence on them, and have a conversation and think about, is this someone I want to work with? And if it is, fantastic. Probably the last thing is, don't use too many recruiters, because I think then that's it's not as exciting for the recruiter, because if they think you're working with everyone, they're like, oh, I won't give that much time on him. Yeah. So pick your recruiters and maybe work with 2 or 3 or 1 for a period of time. You can do that. Give me or you like a week or whatever. But then after that, if it doesn't feel like it's working out, maybe expand it to 2 or 3 more. But no more than that, and also you're going to stress yourself out with job seeking, having lots of calls and people pushing you everywhere. I don't think is really pleasant. I mean, what's your thoughts on that before we wrap up?
I definitely think, don't work with more than 3, maybe even just 2 tops. If not, it's such a headache. And I think you don't, just because you spoke to one recruiter doesn't mean that you need to work with them. If you don't gel with them, then it's absolutely fine. It's completely up to you. You can say thank you very much, but no, thank you, because
Exactly.
it's up to you as well. And I think it's always good, like if you have your first conversation with a recruiter, if they take the time to listen to you and ask questions, and probably you talk more than the recruiter, then that's a good sign that they're actually trying to understand what you're looking for, and then they're able to kind of say, okay, what you've just said, I think you could be really good for this company, for example, and this is why. So just listen and talk, and then hopefully, again, I'm not a huge fan of a recruiter sending out your CV to every single practice they know. Should be a lot better than that. And obviously you just know where your details go to. And
Yes.
don't just say, like, just send them anywhere, because yeah, that's a nightmare. And I don't think that any other recruiter would want to work with you, because it's going to look really bad on everyone.
Yeah, the amount of times that's happened, you should always find out where your CV's gone, and don't let people manipulate you into sending your CV elsewhere. And you'd be amazed at how many times I found that GDPR's broke, and most people are okay with it. And I'm like, dude, you should not be okay with your CV going halfway across London. That's not a good look for you or anyone. But anyways, we'll bring it back to where we started. So we've kind of gone around and covered a lot of really good ground. So I thank you so much, Eileen, here. On this note, I'm going to loop it back around to where we started. So I think that ArchJobs is a really good creation. So thank you for spending time on a kindred mission, kindred souls, at uncovering the culture of architecture practices and posting those jobs which are more easily accessible. So on that note, where can people find you, Eileen?
They can find me on LinkedIn. It's Eileen Round. And then obviously that's probably it, actually. I don't really have that many other things. I've got Twitter, but I don't really use that.
LinkedIn's
probably
the one.
not the best. It is the one, especially if you're a recruiter. That's where you live on.
I think so. So check out ArchJobs, archjobs.co.uk, and you can also find some good guides on ArchJobs as well as the jobs. And you can also find some guides that you've written for me on the architecturesocial.com. So on that note, I'm going to end the live stream here. Thank you so much, everyone. Eileen, I have to get you back on soon so we can rant more about the architecture industry. But in the meantime, thank you so much. I'll end the live stream here, but stay on the stage, Eileen. Don't press anything. See you guys soon. Take care.
Bye.